Hey everyone. Ever wondered why your vote might count less than your neighbor's? Today we're diving into one of the most important but least understood aspects of American democracy, redistricting. And there's a massive fight happening right now in Texas and California that could change the political landscape of the entire country. But before we get into the current battles, let's break down what redistricting actually is. Every 10 years after the census, states redraw their congressional and legislative districts. Sounds boring, right? Well, hold that thought because this process can literally determine who wins elections before anyone even casts a vote. Imagine you're playing a game where you get to make the rules. That's essentially what redistricting is. Politicians drawing maps that decide which voters go into which districts. And just like any game, some players try to bend the rules to their advantage. This is where gerrymandering comes in, the practice of manipulating district boundaries to favor one political party or group over another. Now, let's zoom in on what's happening in Texas and California, because these two states are ground zero for some of the biggest redistricting battles we've seen in decades. In Texas, the Republican-controlled legislature has drawn maps that critics say dilute the voting power of growing minority communities. Despite people of color accounting for 95% of Texas's population growth over the last decade, the new maps actually reduce the number of districts where minorities make up the majority of voters. Meanwhile, in California, they've taken a different approach. Instead of letting politicians draw the maps, they use an independent commission made up of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. But even this supposedly neutral system has come under fire, with both parties claiming the commission's proposed maps unfairly advantage their opponents. Let's break down why these fights matter so much. First, there's raw political power at stake. Texas gained 2 new congressional seats after the 2020 census, while California lost one for the first time in its history. How these seats are allocated can shift the balance of power not just in these states, but in Congress itself. But it goes deeper than that. These maps can effectively silence entire communities by splitting them up across multiple districts, a practice known as cracking, or packing them all into one district to minimize their influence elsewhere. This isn't just about Democrats versus Republicans. It's about whether every American's vote carries equal weight. Here's a real-world example. In Texas's Harris County, which includes Houston, a single district might snake through different neighborhoods in a way that combines heavily Democratic inner-city areas with Republican-leaning suburbs. The result, voters who might have had a chance to elect their preferred candidate in fairly drawn districts find their voices diluted. In California, similar concerns arise even with their independent commission. Some Latino advocacy groups argue that proposed maps would break up historically Latino communities, potentially violating the Voting Rights Act. The commission has to balance multiple competing interests, keeping communities together, ensuring minority representation, and creating reasonably compact districts. So, why should you care about all this? Because these invisible lines on a map have very visible effects on your daily life. The representatives elected from these districts make decisions about healthcare, education, infrastructure, and countless other issues that impact you directly. If your community is split up or packed into a single district, your ability to advocate for your interests is diminished. This isn't just theory. We can see the effects in practice. In Texas, some districts are drawn in ways that combine urban and rural areas with vastly different needs and interests. How can one representative effectively serve both? In California, some proposed districts would combine coastal communities with inland areas, despite these regions often having different environmental and economic concerns. The legal battles are intense. In Texas, multiple lawsuits challenge the new maps, arguing they violate the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution. Civil rights groups point out that while 95% of Texas's growth came from minorities, the maps reduce minority opportunity districts. The state argues its maps are legal and that partisan gerrymandering, while perhaps unfortunate, is perfectly constitutional according to Supreme Court precedent. California's commission faces its own legal challenges, though of a different nature. The transparency of the process means every decision is scrutinized, and various groups are ready to sue if they believe their communities have been unfairly divided or combined. So what can be done about this? Several solutions have been proposed. Some advocate for independent commissions like California's in every state. Others push for mathematical models to draw districts with minimal human input. Still others argue for proportional representation systems that would make district boundaries less important. But while these debates continue, there are things you can do right now. First, get informed about your own district. Is it oddly shaped? Does it combine communities that don't seem to have much in common? These could be signs of gerrymandering. Second, attend public meetings about redistricting in your state. Many states are required to hold these, and public input can make a difference. You can also support organizations fighting for fair maps. These groups often need volunteers and donations to continue their work. And perhaps most importantly, vote in every election, especially state legislative races. Remember, in most states, it's state legislators who control redistricting. The battles in Texas and California are just the tip of the iceberg. Similar fights are happening across the country, and their outcomes will shape American democracy for the next decade. The maps being drawn now will influence everything from local school board decisions to who controls Congress. As we wrap up, let's remember what's really at stake here. This isn't just about politics. It's about whether our democracy truly represents all Americans equally. When districts are drawn fairly, communities can elect representatives who understand their needs and fight for their interests. When they're not, millions of voices can be effectively silenced. The solutions aren't simple, but understanding the problem is the first step. Whether you live in Texas, California, or anywhere else in America, these redistricting battles affect you. They determine whether your vote carries its full weight and whether your community has a real voice in our democracy. So stay informed, get involved, and make your voice heard. Because in the end, democracy works best when everyone has a fair chance to participate. The lines being drawn today will shape our political landscape for years to come. Let's make sure they're drawn fairly. Thanks for watching. If you found this information helpful, please like and subscribe to stay updated on more videos about important issues affecting our democracy. And let me know in the comments, how do you think redistricting has affected your community? Looking forward to hearing your thoughts.